Hello Ron, we are today at the Panzermuseum and we look at experience reports for the Jagdpanzer 38T, also known as the Hetzer, and why this vehicle was such a death trap for its commanders. And I'm currently in the commander position, and as you might notice, in contrast to many other German armored fighting vehicles, there is no commander's cupola here. This was the position of the commander, and also if you look here, there's no periscope for the side. It's for the left side, but for the right side, there's nothing. So if this vehicle was buttoned up in combat, on the right side, this vehicle was completely blind. So basically, we have several reports here. We have an experience report that was printed in the bulletin of the Panzerwaffe, dem Nachrichtenblatt der Panzerwaffe, in October 1944. But this was more or less an official publication, and these reports generally were more positive. And in this case, the problems with the death of the commanders is not much mentioned at all.
It was noted that it was a successful vehicle and that the crews liked it. Additionally, its reliability and other capabilities are praised. Yet far more interesting are the various recommendations and limitations about its employment. Note that the vehicle in the original document is called Jäger, literally hunter, not Jagdpanzer. The platoon, for hunters, must be considered the smallest combat unit, as only then is effective fire coordination, mutual support, and surveillance possible. The coordinated employment of units has always proven to be the most efficient approach. It led most reliably and quickly to decisive success, ensuring that the unit's full combat strength could be quickly freed up for other tasks and that the time was gained for technical maintenance and repairs. Later on, it is stressed again that the Jagdpanzer is not allowed to be deployed alone. Tank destroyers must not be deployed alone, especially for offensive tasks of any kind that lead into enemy territory. Grenadiers must always be assigned for immediate support and close protection. For those that know our translation of the Medium Tank Company regulation, this probably sounds rather familiar. Of course, for the Jagdpanzer 38, this was even more crucial, since casemate tanks are even more vulnerable to flanking. Additionally, the visibility on the Jagdpanzer 38 was also worse. About the assembly, it is noted: assembly, entering and exiting a staging area, except for combat, should be carried out at dusk or in darkness. Noise camouflage through own artillery fire. Towns and places and near train stations are to be avoided. The main issue with this recommendation is that it was rather unlikely that the German commanders had much of an option anymore, as some of the other reports will indicate, where even basic maintenance was denied by a commander. The question has to be asked if they could choose the time to move into position in darkness and/or get artillery fire to get the tanks in or out of position at all. The next part notes its capabilities. In combat against tanks and anti-tank guns, its low profile allows it to behave like a true hunter. It enables the light tank destroyer 38 to quickly withdraw from direct enemy sight and heavy fire, and to attack the enemy again from other positions at effective firing range with concentrated fire. The front armor can withstand fire from the Russian 7.62 cm anti-tank guns. So far, only hits to the side and rear had resulted in failures. It is therefore particularly important to always show the enemy only the strong chest. Necessary movements across the front must be carried out outside of direct enemy fire with armor-piercing weapons. This was a key strength of the Jagdpanzer 38. The reports about the employment of the Pak-40 and Marder from 1942 particularly noted that the gun had a hard time dealing with enemy tanks, since they usually stayed out of effective range of the German guns and then used long-range fire to destroy the German guns or vehicles due to their low armor protection. Additionally, that supporting infantry attacks was generally not possible as well due to the lack of mobility and or armor protection. This is also relevant for the next paragraphs. In supporting immediate counterattacks, the Leichte Panzerjäger-Abteilung has repeatedly contributed decisively to a rapid resolution. Never act alone in this situation. The infantry must be notified in advance, as the tank destroyers must return to their ammunition supply points during the battle after a successful counterattack. Communication with grenadiers during the battle was maintained by direct shouting. Targets were assigned by grenadiers using flares and shouting to the commander. Note that in this case, alone refers not to a single vehicle but without infantry support. Of course, here too, a low amount of ammunition was a serious issue. While the name Hetzer suggests a fast vehicle, this was clearly not the case. Even this report, that was by far the most positive, noted the Leichte Panzerjäger-Abteilung is too slow for use in fully motorized formations or combat groups, for instance for violent reconnaissance advances. Such missions wear it out prematurely and cause unnecessary losses due to technical damage. This is one of the key differences between the Jagdpanzer IV and the Jagdpanzer 38. While the Jagdpanzer 38 was assigned to infantry divisions, the Jagdpanzer IV was assigned to panzer divisions. Yet it also underlines that the term Hetzer made little sense for the Jagdpanzer 38. As far as we know, the name came from a mix-up early on, yet let's move on. In the street fighting in Warsaw, the Leichte Panzerjäger-Abteilung proved its worth thanks to its maneuverability on the road. The all-around machine gun was particularly advantageous in this context. Since the gunner has to open the hatch to reload, it is necessary for another tank destroyer to provide covering fire. Here again, the limitations compared to regular tanks are made apparent. So let's take a look at the next reports. These reports not only give information about the limitations of the Jagdpanzer 38, but also the circumstances this vehicle was employed as well. Keep in mind that the Jagdpanzer 38 was also sometimes called Sturmgeschütz, Panzerjäger or just Jäger. This report is from the General der Panzertruppen West. He notes, this is the second case in 14 days that a tank destroyer company, returning from a refresher training, has been completely destroyed in just a few days. About the reasons, the following is noted. The extent to which inadequate training of the company due to the shortness of time available and the lack of fuel is to blame for this could not yet be determined from here. In any case, the tactical leaders who ordered the operation without taking into account the nature of the weapon and without responding to suggestions or justified objections from the tank destroyer battalion commander or company commander are also to blame. Subordinating them under an infantry battalion carries the inherent risk that unfeasible missions will be demanded. Cooperation between the assault guns with the infantry unit is preferable. This was not only a late war problem, although in late war it was probably more pronounced. It was reported throughout the war that the infantry and other arms had rather unrealistic demands and/or views about armored vehicles. This kinda makes sense if you are a squishy rifleman. A tank is comparatively invincible, since fragmentation and machine gun bursts don't do much. Yet at the same time, armored vehicles can jump into a ditch for cover, and the battlefield awareness due to visibility, but also engine noise, is very limited as well. Similarly, infantry was generally not happy with the Panzer arm, and they preferred Sturmgeschütz units, since those are generally under the command of the artillery, and artillerymen are trained to support the infantry. The report goes now into details what went wrong. The ordered employment for the local defense on the night of November 14th to 15th is to be rejected in the strongest terms. Due to the limited traverse of the bell, the engine must be running for the tank destroyer to be ready for action. The tank gives itself away, while its own crew hears nothing. Particularly in case of the newly formed unit with new equipment, special care must be taken to ensure adequate technical maintenance. Minor omissions quickly result in serious damage, which often leads to premature total failure. This clearly shows the weakness of a case-made tank destroyer in comparison to one with a turret in certain situations. About the employment for the next day, it is noted, for the operation on November 15th, the tank destroyer company was deployed too far forward. If the enemy had initiated the attack with its customary preparatory artillery fire, tank destroyers would probably have been lost even before the attack began. If the company had been employed deeper in the main defensive area, it would in all likelihood have been able to successfully engage the 14 enemy tanks reported in the report. Now the Corps Command answered to the previous report with further details that show that the general circumstances of that deployment were basically a burning dumpster fire on tracks. The company had been retrained from towed 8.8 cm pack to Jagdpanzer 38 and had 24 Jagdpanzer 38 and an escort platoon of 1 officer, 4 non-commissioned officers and 55 men, all equipped with submachine guns. Note, since The MP-44 was called a submachine gun, but was later renamed into Sturmgewehr 44. This could also mean that this refers actually to an assault rifle and not to an MP-40 or other kind of regular submachine gun. The commander reported to the division while the company was unloading and immediately received the order to deploy at around 5 p.m. on November 13th. The immediate employment without reconnaissance, without any knowledge of terrain, and without coordination with the grenadiers was demanded by tactical necessity, despite the objections of the commander of the tank destroyer battalion and the company commander. For the attack, the company was placed under the command of an infantry battalion commander, a very weak battalion made up of scattered troops, etc., under a foreign commander. About the US attack, the following details are provided. At 9:15 a.m., the Americans, literally it was the American, launched their attack after blinding the German main line of resistance with smoke. When the smoke cleared, the Americans were 40 to 50 meters away from the assault guns, mainly on the left wing of the company. The Jagdpanzers immediately opened fire. 2 Jagdpanzers were quickly destroyed with close-range weapons after the optics were shot out, and 2 commanders were killed by headshots. Basically, the commander on the Hetzer was a sitting duck. The commander position on the tank was generally not a safe place, but with the Jagdpanzer 38, it was particularly atrocious. To give you a better idea, here's the inside of the Jagdpanzer 38T. Keep in mind that this was originally a Swiss J13 that was converted to a Jagdpanzer 38T. So some aspects are not a perfect match, but in overall, it's correct. As you can see, there's no vision device for the commander to look forward or to the right, only one backward. There's a vision device on the left side, but that is for the loaders. So basically, the commander in a buttoned-up Jagdpanzer 38 could only look to the rear.
And finally, we have a report from the Heeres-Panzerjäger-Abteilung 731, the Army Tank Destroyer Battalion 731 from January 1945. And this is particularly interesting because this unit was the first one to receive the Jagdpanzer 38T, sometimes called Hetzer, in summer 1944. So this is one of the units with the most experience with this weapon.
The report deals with combat in the Third Courland battle, particularly from 1st December 1944 to 31st January 1945. It is noted that due to enemy artillery fire, the anti-tank defenses was mostly performed by self-propelled guns. After the anti-tank guns were knocked out by the artillery barrage, anti-tank defense relied primarily on Sturmgeschütze, Leichte, Panzerjäger and self-propelled guns. Regarding the deployment of the Heeres-Panzerjäger-Abteilung 731, it should be noted that until the start of the battle it was available as a corps reserve and with one company as a division reserve for the 205th Infantry Division. After the breach areas in the core sector had been marked out, the remaining 2 companies were assigned to a division. On the first day of deployment, the company strength was 7 hunters each. The weather took a further toll on the units. The sudden onset of frosty weather caused increased technical difficulties, primarily breakage of the bevel gear and damage to the final drive, so that only 60% of the planned capacity was achieved on a daily basis. Interestingly enough, this report notes that weak infantry support can be sufficient for hasty counterattacks. During the day, the impulsive immediate hasty counterattack with minimal infantry support proved effective. When carrying out multiple hasty counterattacks on the same target, different approaches must be chosen. For example, the 3rd Company had to carry out 3 counterattacks in one day against a village located on a dominant hill. Only by repeatedly searching for and finding new approaches were the hunters able to maintain the element of surprise and thus ensure success. It is particularly noted that the night attacks were successful. This is interesting in several regards, since it's generally stated and known that night attacks require experienced personnel. Additionally, visibility in armored vehicles is bad enough during the day already. Later on, it is noted that the sound of tracks had a demoralizing effect on the enemy. Night attacks were particularly successful. However, they must not be allowed to continue until dawn. The advantage of night attacks is that the enemy's anti-tank defenses are extremely hampered in their accuracy and can be more easily overrun. The further our own counterattack progresses successfully, the greater the danger of encountering heavy weapons, especially the enemy's anti-tank defenses. It is added that if the Jagdpanzers are still in the enemy position when visibility increases, that this will lead to heavy losses, particularly noting that the company lost 3 tanks in such a situation. The problems with visibility for the driver and commander are noted, with a special note that the losses in terms of commanders is out of the ordinary. The driver's visibility is severely impaired and he must be constantly instructed by the commander. Even under heavy fire, the commander must remain standing in the hedge to observe. Scissors and angle mirrors cannot be used. This explains the exceptionally high number of officers and commander casualties, which is disproportionate to other casualties. Another issue was that if the supporting infantry lost contact, the commander was even more threatened than he already was. Cohesion with the accompanying infantry is lost due to poor visibility. It often remains in place under heavy enemy fire and cannot be retrieved because the commanders are fully occupied with observing the battlefield. This makes the tank destroyer particularly vulnerable to close combat. The commander must keep his submachine gun and hand grenades ready at all times.
To summarize, the reports clearly indicate that this was a capable vehicle, but it had certainly its limits. And one major drawback was the vulnerability of the commander and also the limited visibility it provided for his position. It was several times mentioned that the loss of the commanders was extremely high, with the one exception for the Nachrichtenblatt der Panzerwaffe, although I suspect that in the original report this was also included, but of course it was not seen as particularly, let's call it, motivating to provide this information in a widespread form. Big thank you to the Panzermuseum Munster for inviting me. Big thank you to the supporters on Patreon and subscribers for making these videos possible. Thank you to Tobias and Andy for helping out. Thank you for watching and see you next time.